Imagine discovering that the man for whom you sacrificed everything, your family, your homeland, even your own children in the name of love, abandons you for a younger woman who is politically more convenient. Imagine the fury that would consume your heart upon realizing that all the crimes you committed for him were in vain. This is not just a story of betrayal. This is the true story of Medea, the sorceress of Colchis, whose revenge would become one of the most terrible and cinematic in Greek mythology. Welcome to a world where love and hatred walk hand in hand, where passion can transform a princess into a murderer, and where dark magic meets feminine fury. This is the story of Medea, a woman who defied gods and men, who chose the cruelest possible revenge, and whose name still evokes terror today when we speak of betrayal and retaliation. But before we dive into this spiral of blood and magic, I must warn you. This story contains acts of child violence and psychological manipulation that disturb even the most resistant hearts. The story of Medea begins in distant Colchis, a kingdom on the shores of the Black Sea, where her father, King Eets, guarded the legendary Golden Fleece. Medea was no ordinary princess. She was the granddaughter of the sun god Helios and had inherited extraordinary magical powers. From childhood, she mastered the arts of witchcraft, knew the secrets of poisonous plants, and could summon spirits to do her bidding. She was a woman of hypnotizing beauty and unlimited power, but also possessed a heart capable of both extreme love and hatred. Everything changed when Jason arrived in Colchis with his Argonauts, seeking the Golden Fleece. Jason was everything a Greek hero should be: young, brave, ambitious, and devastatingly attractive. But there was a problem. King Eets had no intention of giving up the Golden Fleece easily. He imposed impossible tasks on Jason, plowing a field with fire-breathing bulls, sowing dragon's teeth that would transform into warriors, and finally facing the dragon that never slept and guarded the treasure. That's when fate and the goddess Aphrodite intervened. Aphrodite, wanting to help Jason, made Medea fall madly in love with the Greek hero. It wasn't gradual or romantic love. It was an instant and overwhelming obsession that completely consumed Medea's soul. For the first time in her life, this powerful and independent woman found herself completely dominated by an emotion she couldn't control. Medea knew she was betraying her own family and homeland, but the love she felt for Jason was stronger than any loyalty. She decided to help him conquer the Golden Fleece, even knowing this would mean her own ruin. Using her magic, she gave Jason a potion that would make him invulnerable to the bull's fire, taught him how to defeat the warriors born from dragon's teeth, and finally used her enchantments to put the guardian dragon to sleep. But betrayal demands sacrifice, and Medea knew she couldn't remain in Colchis after helping Jason. When her father discovered what she had done, his fury was absolute. Medea had to flee with the Argonauts, forever abandoning her homeland, her family, and her identity as Princess of Colchis. She had chosen love above all else, and now would have to pay the price. But Medea's betrayal went beyond simply helping Jason. When her brother Absyrtus led a pursuit to recover her, Medea committed an act that would reveal the depth of her dark nature. She killed her own brother, dismembered his body, and scattered the pieces across the sea, knowing that her father would be forced to stop the pursuit to collect the remains and give them proper burial. This was the first sign that Medea was capable of any atrocity when she felt threatened. The return to Iolcus brought new challenges. Peleus, Jason's uncle who had sent the young hero on this deadly mission, refused to hand over the throne as promised. Once again, Medea used her magic to help her beloved. She convinced Peleus's daughters that she could rejuvenate their father using a magical ritual. As a demonstration, she cut an old ram into pieces, placed it in a cauldron with magic herbs, and transformed it into a young lamb. Peleus's daughters, desperate to restore their father's youth, followed Medea's instructions. But this time, the sorceress didn't use the true magic herbs. They cut their own father into pieces and boiled him in a cauldron, killing him horribly. Medea had orchestrated the perfect murder, using filial love as a weapon, and Jason finally had his revenge against Peleus. For years, Jason and Medea lived in relative happiness. They married, had 2 children, and Medea used her powers to protect and prosper the family. She had sacrificed everything for this man: her homeland, her family, her innocence, but believed she had finally found her place in the world. Medea had transformed from sorceress princess to devoted wife, and for a time, it seemed her bet on love had been worth it. But the masculine heart is fickle, and Jason began to tire of his barbarian wife. No matter how much Medea loved him, she would always be a foreigner in Greek territory, a sorceress whose dark past haunted the present. When the king of Corinth offered Jason his daughter Glauce in marriage, along with the promise of inheriting the kingdom, Jason saw an opportunity he couldn't refuse. Jason's betrayal was devastating to Medea. He wasn't just abandoning her, he was completely erasing her existence from his life. Jason argued that the marriage to Glauce was purely political, that this would be better for everyone, including the children he and Medea had had together. He spoke of security, stability, future, but Medea heard only one thing: that all the sacrifices she had made, all the crimes she had committed for love, meant nothing to him. Medea's fury went beyond any normal human emotion. This was the wrath of a betrayed woman, combined with the power of a sorceress capable of moving mountains. She had killed for this man, had destroyed her own family, had exiled herself from her homeland. And now he was discarding her as if she were just an inconvenient obstacle in his path to power. Medea began planning her revenge with the same meticulousness with which she had helped Jason conquer the Golden Fleece. She knew that simply killing Jason would be insufficient. He needed to suffer in the same way she was suffering. He needed to lose everything he loved, needed to experience the same pain of betrayal and abandonment that she was feeling. Medea's first target was Glauce, the young princess who had stolen her husband. Medea created a wedding gift that would be remembered forever: a dress and golden crown of incomparable beauty. But these pieces were impregnated with magical poisons that would activate as soon as they were worn. Medea sent the gifts through her own children, using their innocence to ensure the gifts would be accepted without suspicion. When Glauce wore the cursed outfit, the horror began immediately. The dress stuck to her skin like a second skin and began burning her alive. The crown melted on her head, corroding her face and brain. Glauce died in agony, her body being consumed by magical poisons while she screamed for help that never came. When her father, the king of Corinth, tried to save her, the poison spread to him too, killing him in the same terrible way. But even this horrible revenge wasn't enough to calm Medea's fury. Jason still had something she hadn't destroyed, something he loved more than any kingdom or wife: his children, the 2 boys that Medea had given birth to, who carried both her and Jason's blood, who represented the future and continuity of the hero's lineage. What Medea did next shocked even the gods. She knew that killing her own children would be the final blow against Jason, but she also knew it would be her own eternal damnation. These were her children too, innocent children she loved deeply. But her need for revenge had become greater than any maternal instinct. Medea took her children to a sacred place, away from curious eyes. She embraced them one last time, looked into their trusting eyes, and then killed them with her own hands. Each blow was simultaneously a stab to Jason's heart and to her own heart. She was destroying herself to destroy the man who had betrayed her. When Jason arrived, desperate to save his children after discovering Glossy's fate, it was too late. Medea appeared before him in a chariot pulled by dragons, sent by her grandfather Helios, carrying the bodies of their dead children. The sight completely broke Jason. He had lost his new wife, his future kingdom, his children, and his sanity, all in a single night. Medea left Corinth, leaving a trail of total destruction. She had achieved her revenge, but the price had been her own humanity. The woman who had sacrificed everything for love had transformed into a creature of pure hatred, incapable of finding peace or redemption. The legend of Medea spread throughout the ancient world, becoming a symbol of both feminine power and its destructive capacity. She represented the dangers of underestimating a betrayed woman, especially a woman with power. Playwrights like Euripides immortalized her story, exploring the psychological complexities of a woman torn between love and hatred, motherhood and revenge. Medea found refuge in Athens, where King Aegeus offered her protection in exchange for using her magic to help him have children. But even there, her dark nature continued to manifest. When Theseus, Aegeus's son, returned to Athens, Medea tried to poison him, seeing him as a threat to her own son's position with Aegeus. Only last-minute intervention by fate prevented another murder. Medea's story resonates through the centuries because it represents something fundamental about human nature: our capacity to transform love into hatred, our ability to justify any atrocity when we feel betrayed. It shows how passion can become obsession, how devotion can transform into destructive possessiveness. Modern psychologists study Medea as an extreme example of borderline personality, a woman unable to deal with abandonment and willing to destroy everything to avoid being left alone. Her story is also seen as a pioneering exploration of feminine psychology, showing a woman as an active agent of her own revenge, not just a passive victim of circumstances. The most disturbing aspect of Medea's story is how she uses her own children as final weapons in her war against Jason. Infanticide for revenge represents perhaps the most extreme example of how hatred can corrupt even the most basic instincts of human nature. Medea knew she was condemning herself to an eternity of suffering, but considered it an acceptable price to ensure Jason would suffer even more. Medea's magic also represents primitive feminine power, the capacity to create and destroy, to heal and poison, to give life and take it away. In a male-dominated society, Medea represented masculine terror of uncontrolled feminine power, the woman who refuses to be subjugated or ignored. Today, more than 2,000 years later, Medea's story remains relevant. It speaks to anyone who has ever felt betrayed by someone they trusted completely, anyone who has ever experienced the transformation of love into hatred. But it also serves as a warning about the dangers of allowing revenge to consume our humanity. Medea's tragedy is not just that she was betrayed by Jason. It's that she allowed this betrayal to transform her into something she never wanted to be. The princess who had sacrificed everything for love became the sorceress who sacrificed everything for revenge. She won her retaliation, but lost her soul in the process. This is the eternal lesson of Medea's story, that perfect revenge is often indistinguishable from perfect self-destruction, that in our desire to make others suffer as we have suffered, we may end up causing even more pain to ourselves, and that some victories are so expensive they become defeats in ways we could never imagine. The next time you taste the bitter flavor of betrayal, remember Medea of Colchis. Remember that revenge may seem sweet when we plan it, but its real taste is always of ashes and remorse. And remember that sometimes the best revenge against those who betray us is simply refusing to allow them to destroy who we are inside.